All right, welcome to this quick little primer on Blender to help you get a feel for the interface. And we're not going to be able to go through everything, just kind of the key things needed for moving around and modeling essentially at this point. So hope this helps. All right, when you first open up Blender, you'll be presented with this splash screen here. You can see I'm using version 3.4, just came out recently, and if I just click outside of the splash screen onto my 3D scene, you'll see I have a blank screen. Now normally there will be a default cube in the middle and it will look like this when you open up Blender for the first time, but I don't always start with a cube, and I find myself deleting it right out of the gate. So I went ahead and saved a default startup file after deleting this cube. So essentially, to delete something in Blender, you can push the delete key. If you hit that, it'll just delete it. I'll Command Z to undo that. And another way to delete things in Blender is to hit X, and then you'll be presented with a prompt. Click it with your mouse. Right now we're looking at the 3D window. Here you can see my mouse hovering over it, and by default we're in the modeling tab up here in the top of the screen. Blender has created several layouts out of the box and you can create your own, save it, all kinds of good things, but for the most part these tabs will handle anything you need. If you wanted to jump over to animation, you click the animation tab, and then you have the timeline along the bottom and two windows. This window over here on the left would be your camera view, and then on the right you have again that standard 3D view. Let's go back to modeling, and before I get too far, let me enable my screencast keys. Hit the checkbox here up in the corner. It should enable it. There it is. It's alive. Okay, so again, screencast keys. So then I played with these different settings here to change the size, put a blue background on there, change the font size so it's easy to see on these recordings. First of all, if you're new to 3D or just new to Blender, you're going to be asking yourself, how do I move around the 3D scene? And so for Blender, it's the middle mouse button. If you click and drag the middle mouse button, you can see you're able to rotate around that cursor, that center origin point in the middle of my scene here. If you want to grab the screen and pan from side to side, you hold down Shift, middle mouse button. There we go. Shift, middle mouse button. If you want to zoom in, you hold down Command or Control, middle mouse button, and then you'll zoom in. You can also use the scroll wheel on the mouse to zoom in as well. So those are important things that just need to become muscle memory for you. Middle mouse button to rotate around the object, and middle mouse button while holding Shift to pan, and then Command, middle mouse button to zoom. If you've forgotten those keyboard shortcuts or you don't want to use them, you can also use these icons over here at the right of the screen. You can see if I click on this move hand and use my left mouse button, I'm getting that same effect. Or click on the camera, that toggles the camera, which you can do that by hitting 0 on your numpad as well. And then zoom for obviously the zoom magnifying glass there. And then to rotate, grab this little gizmo up here with the XYZ on it. Or another handy thing is you can see these X, Y, or Z. If you want to snap to a specific view, hit Y, and there you go. You've snapped to that view. Hit X. You're looking at it from the side. Y is the front. Z is looking down on the object. So probably help if we added an object, right? And to add an object, you can go to the Add menu, and then Mesh, add a cube, or whatever you want to start with. Let's go ahead and add a cube. The alternate, quicker way to do that, so we'll delete that and hit Shift-A, Mesh, Cube right there. You get your menu. So there is our cube. And right now we're in object mode. So in object mode, we can move this cube as or whatever our model is as one. And so you've got this move tool over here on the left hand side of the screen, and you can grab the red arrow, move it along the x-axis, and if you're not sure on which axis that is, these colors correspond with the colors of the little gizmo up in the top right. Green arrow, same thing. Or if you want to move in the X and Y axis, there's this little blue square here that allows us to move like that. Okay. But the better way, keyboard shortcuts are your friend. You can hit the G key for grab, and now wherever I move my mouse, it starts to move. But if I want to constrain it to an axis, like the x-axis, I can then hit X, and now it's just moving along that red line there, the x-axis. If I want to move along the y-axis or z-axis, there you go. Okay, but what about moving on the x and y-axis, or two axes at once? Well, great question. Hit G and then Shift Z to move in the X and Y. So basically we're saying we don't want Z, just X and Y, Shift Z. So G, Shift Z. If we want to move in just the Z and Y axis, yep, you guessed it, G, Shift X. And now we're saying we don't want the X axis. And then once you've moved it to the place where you want it, you can hit your left mouse button to kind of lock that position. I'll hit Command Z to undo that. You can also constrain your movement by certain increments. So if I were to hit G, X, and then hold down Control, it snaps to the grid. See that little center orange piece is snapping to the grid? And you can see in the top left up here that it's saying, I've moved 4 meters, 3 meters along the x-axis. That works really well for scaling something as well. So to scale something, you can use this scale button over here on the left, or you can hit S and just start to drag, and then it uniformly scales your object. Okay. And again, if we want to constrain that, we can hold down Control, and then if we see in the top left, it's just by 1.2 rather than 1.22254 or whatever. So we're constraining the size. So that comes in handy. Now, again, we're in object mode, and let's go ahead and hit N to bring up the tool menu, and then look at our item information over here. The transform is referring to transforming movement, essentially from one place to another. And you can see we're zeroed out on the location and rotation. So that means that our box is at 0, 0, 0 on the XYZ axis, right? And there's no rotation. It's perfectly straight and aligned. If I were to hit RZ to lock the rotation on the Z axis, you can see the Z information moving over there on the right. Okay. And then if I were to scale it, you can see, okay, it's 0.6 something of what the original scale is. And things can get kind of wonky if you scale things here in object mode and don't do this step. So this is kind of a gotcha. So let's say I want to scale this box. I want to flatten it. I want to turn it into more of a rectangle. And I hit SX. So now it's squashing it on the x-axis. Okay, and you can see you want your objects to stay 1-to-1 scale. Otherwise, when you go to add modifiers later or for other purposes, it can cause issues. So the way you can tell if your object isn't 1-to-1 is under scale here on the options menu. So we can see we're X is 0.104 and then Y and Z are still 1-to-1. So what you can do to fix that is hit Control A, and then we want to apply the scale. So select scale, and then boom, everything went back to 1-to-1. So now it's as if we brought this into the scene just like this. It's a flattened cube. Okay. And so there's some info for you there. Okay, and now let's say we want to duplicate our object. What you want to do there is hit Shift D, and now you've cloned your object. And if I hold down X, it'll just move it in that direction. Okay, and I could continue to make copies. Hold down X. There we go. We've got 3 flattened cubes on the scene now. And if you noticed, over in the top right hand corner, there's this little, I don't know exactly what it's called, outliner. That's what it is. Your outliner, basically an outline of what is on your scene. And here was our initial cube. It's just called cube. And then below that is cube.001 and cube.002. So those were our clones that we made. And let's say we want to treat these as if it's one object. How would we do that? Well, you can go and select those, click Shift, or just click on the background, left click, and drag a box around it, and then now we've selected anything within that box. Alright, and then hold or just hit Command J, and now that stands for join those objects together. So now if I click on one of them, they're all selected, and it merged them together over here in our outliner, and it's calling it cube.002. And it's always, like in Photoshop and everything, a good idea to name your objects or your layers. So double click on that and call that 3 flat cubes or something. Hit enter, and there we go. And you'll notice that that moved up to the top of the list, and that's because this list is currently sorted by alphabetical. Okay, if I click on that, we see this little icon below it basically saying that it's geometry. But again, we could spend hours just digging into each menu item. But it is important to know for modeling that whatever's selected here is what pertains to these icons, these menus over here on the bottom right hand side. So I select my object, and I click on this wrench icon over here, and that is the modifier tab. And there's several modifiers that you can add under this tab that help with modeling and other things. One modifier that we'll use a lot in modeling is the mirror command. So that makes it so you only have to work on one side of your model at a time. So let's go ahead and add that mirror, and you saw how it kind of jumped, and that's because we've been moving things around and it's mirroring on the x-axis, but it's based on the center point. So since our model isn't at 0 on the scene, and we can change it, we can hit 0. There we go. Now it's mirrored there, but we had 3 cubes, now we only have 5. Why is that? Well, it's because the middle cube is on top of itself, essentially. So if we were to go into edit mode, and the way you do that is hit tab. You can see over here on the left hand side that we changed from object mode to edit mode. So if I hit tab again, it'll toggle. See that? Or you can just select the mode here, and depending on the type of object you have selected, you'll have different options, different modes. So again, we're going to go to edit mode, and you can see we can't select these items over here on the left because that's our cloned mirrored version, but we can select these 3 over here on the right. And if I were to drag a box around these, it looks like they're all selected, but it's only selecting the points of the model that I can see. So there's one point behind here that isn't being selected, as well as a point here. So if I rotate, you can see those are still black. Yeah, another one. So it's important to open this one as well. So if you're going to select things like that, you can, select it, rotate, hold down shift, select these, hold shift, and go and select things that way, and you can see that it's all consistently orange, telling us that it's all selected. You can do that, and then if I were to hit G, X, and move, then great, it's all moving. The other thing you can do is there's this little button here, the toggle X-ray, so you could click that, or you could hit the Option Z. Yeah, there we go. Hit Option Z, and now we're seeing through it. So if we drag a rectangle around it, we're selecting everything. And if G, X, we can move those apart. And anything I do on this side of the model, so if I grab just those 2 points and hit G, Y, then there it goes. It's moving on both sides, which comes in super handy. And currently you can see we're in vertex mode. We're just highlighting one point of the model at a time, or multiple if we select multiple. But there are other ways to select your geometry in edit mode, and that's right here. You've got point mode or vertex mode, edge mode, and face or polygon mode. So you can click on those to toggle. You'll see it changes a little bit. Those vertexes disappeared. Now if I were to select that edge, it's selected. Hold down shift, grab another edge, so those 2 edges are selected. Or if I click on this one for polygon, you can see there's a little point in the middle of each polygon. So to select the polygon you want, you can drag around that point. And that's just in X-ray mode. If I were to do Option Z, again, those points go away, and I can just click anywhere on the polygon. You might say, well, that's great, but I don't know if I want to drag my mouse all the way up to that top left-hand corner to toggle between those different modes. Well, guess what? You're in luck, because there's a keyboard shortcut for that. And they correspond to the top row number keys. So Vertex is 1, so if I hit 1, boom, vertex. Hit 2, I can't hover over it, I gotta hover over this here. Hit 2, edge mode. Hit 3, you guessed it, polygon face mode. So a lot of times when I'm modeling, I'll be moving back and forth, 1, 2, 3, get the selection type that I'm looking for. So let's say I want to bevel a specific edge, go into edge mode, grab that edge, and then for bevel it's Command B, and then you just start to drag, and we get that nice sharp edge created. Let's say you wanted to do a rounded bevel, we'll undo that and hit Command B again. Do the same thing, you start to drag your mouse, but then if you use your mouse wheel and start to scroll down with it, you add subdivisions, and you can create a rounded beveled edge there and make it as, you know, tight or as loose as you need. Okay, so that comes in super handy. And we won't go into each of those modeling tools. Just wanted to give you a taste of what's to come, if you will. So there it is. That's those are the most important pieces to kind of get started making things happen inside of Blender. Hopefully you've gotten a little familiar with you know, the interface and what's possible. And go ahead and join me for the next video where we model something from start to finish. In this case, we're focusing on a Polaroid camera from the 70s or 80s or whatever, so old school, good stuff. Should be fun. We'll see you later.